This is the Television Enthusiast Podcast, The Weekly Set, Episode 8, recorded March 19th, 2015. Welcome to The Weekly Set, the TV Enthusiast Podcast. I am your host, Tyson. Today I am joined by Kat.
Hi.
Will.
Hello.
And Lee.
Hello.
So today we're going to be talking about 4 shows we've been watching over the course of the last week or so. I'm going to start off with iZombie, which premiered. iZombie is, of course, from the creator of Veronica Mars, Rob Thomas. This is basically Rob Thomas conquering both comic book movies, or comic book shows, and zombie shows at the same time, while channeling some of his Veronica Mars wit and humor. So, what do you guys think of it?
I thought it was fun. I was most intrigued, I think, because the commercials made it look so charming, and I thought the tone of the show was in keeping with that. And having Rose, what's her name? McIver. Yeah, I thought she's very charming in the role, and I think she really helps sell the series. And I also I think I said this in my response I sent to you, but what I really enjoyed is that I think it's a lot more superhero aesthetic than I was expecting in terms of the whole. I feel like the zombie is kind of being used as a secret identity in the same way that other superhero shows usually use that idea. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
It's very comic booky, and it even uses those what do you call those? Will, do you know what they're called? The little things where they say meanwhile and something, or they have that on comic books.
The transitions. I don't think there's a specific name for it.
But those little blocks, you know, you'd see in a comic book that gives you text or something.
Okay,
the
word
yeah, I really liked those.
I thought it was fun. I really loved the main character. She is far and away the best character on the show, which is, suppose it's her show. But, but yeah, she's a lot of fun. I really one of the things I really loved is towards the end of the episode, when she gets all amped up and she goes full zombie almost. And yeah. I thought that was really interesting.
She's riding on the hood of the car.
Yeah.
And when she woke up and she was all zombied out. That's a good point. That there's a possibility of there being, it reminds me of Vamping Out on any show with a vampire, is that there are 2 different personas and 2 different appearances.
Right, exactly. So the idea that she can lose composure or lose control, that has a lot of interesting story possibilities going into the future. Another thing, I liked the supporting characters, the doctor in the morgue and her police partner, who is incredulous. He's skeptical at first, all this crazy stuff is being thrown at him. And then
the look he gave when when he was testing out her, if her theory was right, he's all I'll just show him a picture and he'll react or something. And then he shows the picture and the guy reacts and he gives that look what the fuck?
Yeah.
Incidentally, did you recognize the Johnny guy he was on Veronica Mars? He played Cliff on Veronica Mars.
Oh no, I didn't.
Oh, I didn't recognize that either.
And that's another thing. This show, huge resemblances to Veronica Mars. You can't escape it. Down to, the main character, her snarky attitude. The voiceovers is lifted straight from Veronica Mars. That is...
I also got a Dead Like Me vibe from it, oddly
Me
enough.
Too.
Oddly enough, yeah, it's a little bit Dead Like Me in there, too.
Even some of the transitions, the way it would kind of pan up from something and really quickly go to another shot, reminded me of the scenes in Dead Like Me where she'd be narrating something and it would kind of be really quickly moving between things.
Right. The only thing I hope they don't try to go for this case of the week format that they're starting with. I think that's actually the weakest element of the show. The actual case they were investigating was not in any way interesting. I thought the only interesting thing about it was the cop turned out to be the bad guy, which was a nice twist. But other than that, I was just totally not invested in that part of the story. I
think that's fair, but I think giving it something of a formulaic procedural-like element gives it a good grounding, and I think a lot of shows start out that way, and then they can get into the more heavily serialized elements once they get on their feet. But I think they need something that's enclosed like this in order to get themselves started.
Well, if it follows a similar path to what Veronica Mars did, there's kind of like this A-B story setup where you have your kind of A story that kind of goes throughout the season, and then you have your B story that's episode to episode.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping there's like a larger season-long story here.
It's hard to tell right now because it's like with Veronica Mars, you knew what the larger A story was. It was the Lily Kane death and all that, you know?
You knew that right off the bat.
Yeah, but with this, what you could say is it's like, oh, it's related to, you know, the party on the boat and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But then that also is kind of the overarching story of the entire series, not just the season. So
yeah.
it's hard to tell, like, if they're gonna, what part of that they're gonna encapsulate into just the season.
I thought it was, like, interesting that they already, like, dropped, like, major clues about that incident already in the pilot with the designer drug. Like, they already mentioned that there's this designer drug that could have caused it. And we also have the one character there, which we really didn't see in the pilot, except for, like, in 2 small, quick scenes. But
yeah.
David Anders' character?
David Anders' character, yeah. We know he's going to be, like, a major character going forward. But other than that, you know, not much. But I liked it. I'm totally going to watch the next episode. It had, like, all the charm and wit of a Rob Thomas show that you would expect from one of his shows. And I thought it was a lot of fun.
So, Lee, did you get a chance to watch it?
No, I did not. I have been watching the show that I'm addicted to.
So yeah, we'll have to hear what you think of it once you get to it. But I have to say that, oh man, I just love some of the dialogue in the show. I love the really quick, witty moments. There was one part where I'm trying to remember exactly what was happening, but the police officer guy, who's played by Malcolm Goodwin, he was in Breakout Kings. Who, by the way, is kind of an interesting look for a character like that. You know, it's reminds me of Wallace, and that you have this kind of like, you know, black sidekick character, but he's kind of smaller and kind of slight, and it kind of makes him seem more vulnerable. It's a weird kind of thing that I think Rob Thomas has done.
The character himself is vulnerable too, because he isn't like an established, headstrong, sure detective. He's like trying to prove himself. Like, he is, I got the impression that he was like a rookie detective, or they actually, you know, he has something to prove in the department.
Well, I think they said he was in Vice.
Yeah, they mentioned that he just started out in, homicide? Yeah. So, so that will make it for an interesting exploration for his character.
And they're already gonna put him at odds with some police officers because of the, how it turned out with the case of the week, with the cop being, the other cop being involved.
Yep.
In the crime that's, you know, I want to see if that has a kind of fallout, or if there's gonna be more corruption within the police office, and, you know, what's going on with that.
I think if that element is forgotten in the next episodes or next few episodes, it'll be a missed opportunity.
I'm trying to remember, he had like there was a really funny part where he had said like, you know, what do you see here? Or like, what's missing? And she responded real quick, like, a strong male influence or something.
One of my favorite lines from like the show was like at the beginning, when her fiance is convincing her to go to that boat party. He says, well, what's the worst that could happen? And then the voiceover kicks in, and she says, well, the worst that could happen is an inexplicable and sudden zombie apocalypse.
The line that struck me as being most Rob Thomas is when she was talking to her boss about that one Elton John song, and she said something about, yes, the circle of life was really about zombies or something like that.
Yeah.
That was the closest the show came to sounding like something Veronica Mars would have said.
So I'm looking forward to it. How's it sounding to you, Lee? Like hearing our impressions of it?
It sounds really awesome. I did want to check it out for sure. I know I've heard that it's like Veronica Mars, and yeah, Veronica Mars was a great show, so I'm looking forward to it. It's just like I wish it was on Netflix or just something that I could just watch right away.
It was more easily accessible, yeah.
Yeah.
So, let's move on then. We're going to go on to The Flash now. Now, you don't watch The Flash, do you, Lee?
No, I know it's on the CW as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're going to leave you out a little bit again.
That's
Sorry.
okay.
Basically,
I'll get my turn.
CW is now the best network on television.
Pretty much.
I know,
Yeah.
right? Holy cow. They have so many shows that, like, I will watch or have watched or do watch, like, practically everything on the network.
Right. When a year ago you had to try really hard to convince me to watch anything on CW that was not named Supernatural.
Yeah.
Yeah,
before it used to be Supernatural was like the one you'd tell somebody about and they'd say, but it's on the CW. And you'd go, yeah, but even though it's on the CW.
Yeah, exactly.
CW gets way more crap than it deserves, and maybe I'm biased because I love genre television, but I feel like there's no other network out there that is putting as much into genre television as the CW. And
they're like the new Fox,
television.
except they're not canceling them all.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, and quality genre television on top of that. So I think the CW gets more crap than it deserves.
But let's talk
sure.
about this episode of The Flash. So, what did you guys think? I mean, did you guys like it? What was your general...
This might as well have been the season finale. They dropped bombs left and right. It was mind-blowing.
I feel it was redeeming for what had happened before and the way the show had just come down to nothing.
Well, what I realized coming out of this episode and what I thought was, it's actually pretty impressive how much they're cramming into just the first season of this show. You're talking stuff that in other shows would be spread across different seasons. This is all
Gotham.
Yeah, except Gotham. But this is all happening in like season 1, and it kind of gets you amped up, and it has you wondering, well, what are they going to do for season 2 now or season 3? It's crazy.
Yeah, so there were a lot of major events happen in this. I mean, first off, we kind of knew that Dr. Harrison Wells was the Reverse Flash, or was some, there's like 3 or 4 different types of Reverse Flash in the comics, so we knew he was somehow connected to one of them in some way. But there was that big red herring about Eddie, and just his name, and how the name is connected to a character, and now we found out kind of where that plays into. As being Harrison Wells is actually, it seems like a descendant of Eddie's.
That seems very
I cheated because after like the first big episode with the Reverse Flash, I went and I Wikipedia'd Reverse Flash. I read all the histories of like all the different Reverse Flashes. There's like 4 of them. So I quickly deduced who Harrison Wells, which one he was supposed to be, and I was 100% correct with this episode. That is exactly who they were going for with him.
Mm-hmm.
I think I know who Eddie's gonna end up being.
Because of course Eddie's going to be a supervillain, right? And it's going to happen after he finds out about the Iris-Barrett relationship.
Yeah. Eddie right now, he fits the archetype of the second Reverse Flash.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't say much about that.
Okay.
But
well, I don't know about the two of you, but my response to watching the episode was I literally spent the first 3/4 of it going, I think I'm reaching my limits in terms of patience and tolerance on this show. I can't stand the dialogue. I don't really care for any of the characters. I think the plotting is kind of silly. And then suddenly in the last 10 minutes, three major interesting things happened, and I felt like the show just suddenly went, whoa, wait, we know you're losing interest, so here's a bunch of stuff to happen, and I finished it and went, well, now I have to watch the next episode.
Now you have, that's how I can't believe they ended it on a cliffhanger. I was like, are you serious? Yeah, major stuff happened. The big Harrison Wells reveal, which wasn't a surprise to anybody watching the show, but
how it was connected was a surprise.
How it was connected was a surprise, and also the fact that he finally outed himself to the heroes as a villain. To Cisco, but the other, Rachel, I think, if she doesn't realize that he's not who he says he is by now, then she's kind of stupid. Because she turned around and
conveniently stupid, maybe.
She turned around,
driving me nuts on the show. Is I feel like they've made, and I feel like this is constantly a problem when you have an evil character that's hidden amongst
Smallville syndrome.
Characters, is you make your good characters look stupid when they don't notice all the hints pointing toward that character being evil, and that's totally happened here.
It's a bit of Smallville syndrome.
In this episode, she literally turns around from the bar and notices he's gone from his wheelchair. So at least either the Flash kidnapped him for no reason, or he got up.
Next episode's going to start with her calling Barry, going, "Why the hell did you kidnap him?"
But here's my concern.
And then the whole episode, she's going to be turning on Barry.
I finished this episode and I was really pumped and excited, but then as I thought about it, I went, except that now that they've done the time travel thing, they're going to undo all of the good, interesting stuff they just did in the last 10 minutes, which means that Iris still isn't going to know about Barry, they're still not going to know about Harrison Wells, and all the interesting plot progression they just made is probably going to be undone.
It's like Smallville again. How many times did Smallville find a way to, like, erase people's memories of doing something, or going back in time so that it was a different reality, or...
There is that fear, but I'm hopeful that the writers aren't going to use the time travel aspect to just undo all this stuff that they just did, but rather to, like, switch things up in a more interesting fashion. Because... a lot of people speculate they're doing what in the comics. In the comics, they had a storyline called the Flashpoint Paradox, where the Flash literally goes back in time and saves his mother from being murdered. And then that has a ripple... Yeah. Which is the storyline they're doing here. Which has a ripple effect all across the DC universe where, that makes it so that Bruce Wayne is murdered instead of his father, and his father becomes a more violent Batman. And
so maybe it'll get rid of Gotham.
All kinds of stuff.
That actually brings up one of my other concerns about time travel. And I realize it's been pretty obvious from early on in the series that they were going to do time travel. And I realize we don't know yet exactly what the rules of time travel are going to be in this universe. But if hypothetically, Barry goes back and changes that date that just occurred, then can't we logically say that from that point on, the Flash exists in a different timeline from Arrow? In which case, how can those two shows ever interact again, logically?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know how they plan to address that.
I have a feeling on that. I think what they're going to do is they're going to mess up the timeline. And then, like, immediately after, it's going to become the path of the show to, like, reset the timeline back to what it was.
Right.
Huh.
And it's going to end up, there's, like, big repercussions, and he has to reset the timeline, and then it's going to merge back in. And in the meantime, Flash and Arrow will be set kind of in different universes. It would be really interesting. I don't know if I'd like it as much, because I like Arrow more than I like Flash, but... It would be very interesting if they did have it where, like, all of the sudden Arrow is all messed up.
Yeah,
like the timeline's all messed up. Different characters are around.
If they were ambitious and crazy enough, I'd love them for it. The Flash going back in time would actually have ripple effects that affected Arrow as well.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're like, why isn't Felicity there? And then they're like visiting her grave or something, and you're like, what?
Well, maybe that's how they bring Sarah back for the new show, because that actress has come back for that show, so I'm guessing the Flash has something to do with that.
So I don't want them to go that route. I feel like as an Arrow fan, I would feel incredibly cheated. Especially because what if you're someone who only watches Arrow and not Flash? Like, and it's taking an entirely different context of characters and storylines and forcing an effect on this other show that the other show doesn't necessarily deserve. I feel like that would just be a huge disservice to Arrow. So I really hope they don't go that route.
Yeah, that's why I feel kind of mixed.
I get why you're saying what would be some of the cool advantages to that, but I think
because it would just be ballsy.
I would be really unhappy.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, if you're somebody who only follows Arrow, you would be confused and cheated, and it would only really be cool to people who are following both shows at the same time and are kind of invested in both of them.
I don't think that's what they're going to do. I don't think that they would take that kind of a risk. I mean, networks in general are kind of scared of serialization. Just basic serialization. They're kind of freaked out about something like that, where you'd have to be tied into another show. Like, I can't imagine they'd do that. It would be very ballsy. It would have both positive and negative effects. There'd be good things about it and bad things about it. But in the end, I think it would be too much of a dominant move towards the Flash kind of controlling the timeline or the universe of the two series. That I'd probably dislike it a little bit because of that, because I like Arrow more. But yeah, I mean, there's both sides of it. You know, there's good parts and bad parts about if that happened. I don't think it's going to.
No, I don't think so either. But I really, unlike what Kat was saying, I really hope that they use the time travel aspect to mix up and change the status quo of the Flash in interesting ways. Rather than just undoing everything they just did. Like, using that time travel effect in a cheap manner, which I think would be really lame.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like this, I want this to radically change the fundamentals of the series. And I think I would like Flash a lot more if it made these kind of plot developments on a regular basis. And I think I'll lose a lot of faith in the series if they do what you're saying, if they just use the time travel as more of an undoing gimmick and then go back to their glacial movement in terms of actually having things happen, or at least having interesting things happen.
Like, I was so happy when Iris kissed Barry so that we could move on with that storyline. And that
Amen.
Because that was just getting downright painful.
I'm so tired of them dragging out the sexual tension between them, and I think they've made Iris into a complete waste of a character, so they really just need to get them together already and then just move on to other things.
She literally has nothing to do on this show except be sexual tension for Barry. It's like...
And get in the way of his love life,
in the way of his love life.
Alright, so let's move on then. Let's bring Lee back into the conversation here. Sorry to leave you out for so long.
No, that's fine.
Oh, can I also mention...
Oh, go on.
Can I also mention Arrow was boring this week?
I didn't even get to watch it this week. So.
That's disappointing to hear.
Yeah. Okay, if you haven't watched it, I won't say anymore, but it wasn't particularly interesting.
Okay then, so let's move on then to Misfits. Now, Misfits is a show that I mentioned when we were in the last podcast because I had said there were some similarities tonally to Powers, which I had seen, but that I thought Misfits was a much better show, but it had that same kind of like weird tone to it in which like it could just be kind of like serious, but then like do something just kind of abstract to the point of like absurdity that it's like funny, and then like it would just be kind of serious again, and it's kind of a shock to the system when that stuff happens. And so Lee went and checked it out, got hooked. And so she's been watching it. So yeah, we got Will. You watched the pilot, right?
I watched the pilot. Yep.
Okay, yeah. And Kat wasn't able to see it yet, but let's talk about it and see what you think about it, Lee.
I did not know that this was a show about superheroes. Like, when I found that out after watching the pilot, I was like, I would have watched, like, if I knew that, like, cause they don't make it obvious in the sort of like when you're just scrolling through Netflix. It's not very obvious. It just looks like it looks like an Orange is the New Black kind of show. Like, it looks like teens went to jail and then it's about teens being in jail or something like that. Juvenile teens. But, yeah, like, it is like if the people, I said this yesterday, if the people of Sherlock made heroes. Like, it's so good, and it's British, and it's just amazing. I feel like I get the tone, because, like, I've just watched so much of it, so I understand, like, I'm expecting it to be serious, and then not serious, serious, and then not serious. Like, I'm expecting that, so for me, there isn't as much of a shock for tonal-wise, I guess. But, like, the characters that I liked at first, and I was like, wow, this is amazing, these characters are so cool, like, I feel like I like them less, and the characters that I did not like at the beginning, they are becoming more favorable, and I like that the show is doing that, and I like that level of, like, sophistication, and, like, just, like, the twist of making you see the black and white and everything. It's very nice, it's very layered, it's very cinematic, great, like, really good acting, you know, the thing that I was talking about that was missing with Kimmy Schmidt, like, this is it. This is good acting, good productions, excellent just, it's good. It's British and it's good. I plowed through, like, 2 seasons.
How far have you gotten so far?
I plowed through 2 seasons yesterday.
Okay, wow. So you finished the first 2 seasons.
Oh, yeah. Well,
okay.
I'm like 10 minutes away from 10 minutes away from finishing the second season. You guys are keeping me away.
2 seasons in a day?
I'm 10 minutes away from the second season.
Alright, so Will, you watched just the pilot. What did you think?
I'm mixed on it. I thought at first it was pretty lame. I didn't like any of the characters to start out. I really didn't. And I just thought these guys are like total losers. And then as the episode went on, of course, they some of them at least started to get more likable. And I thought, and you know, and by the end of the first episode, I was like, okay, I'll check out the second episode now. Okay, you got me.
Did you catch Ramsay Bolton?
Yes, I did. But it drove me crazy because the whole time I was thinking, I seen that guy somewhere. I seen him. I cannot place him. And I had this image in my head the whole time of, like, this evil bastard that I hated. So I instantly hated him from the get-go. And I was expecting him to haul off and do something psychotic.
Which will play with your mind, because when they first introduce him, they kind of do it in kind of a creepy way.
Right!
They kind of introduce him in Misfits as being kind of creepy with, you know, like, he's the, we're talking about, what's the character's name here? Simon on Misfits. Like, yeah. And, yeah, when he's first introduced, he's kind of introduced as kind of like, you're kind of unsure of him. You're like, is he just really kind of shy or something? Or is he, like, a creep, you know?
He's, like, really quiet in the fact that he's in juvie. You know, he burned down somebody's house, he said. And so it kind of gives you the impression that he's liable to go off or something.
Yeah, he did. He burned down Winterfell.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's all connected, I'm telling you.
It's all connected.
So, real quick side note before I get back on with Misfits, but that same actor is also in a sitcom, a British sitcom called Vicious, that actually Sir Ian McKellen is also in. And he's hilarious in the part, completely different character from either of these other two.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, I got introduced to this character through Misfits, and I've been seeing him just kind of popping up in random things here and there, and going like, wow, I'm really digging him in these different roles, so, yeah.
And so when you see him, you're more like, that's Simon from Misfits. And now I'm thinking that's Ramsay Snow from Game of Thrones every time I see him.
Yeah, I think Ramsay's kind of taken over in my mind just because of how messed up he is and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, man.
But when I first saw Ramsay, I was like, oh, it's
Simon!
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no, that's not Simon.
So there's kind of two other actors that, you might have seen around here or there. There's the character of Nathan that's in it, who, Lee, was this one of the characters that you didn't like and then started to like?
No, I liked Nathan a lot at the beginning. I'm like, I get his character, and then
Well, see the guy
it starts to wear on you. Like, he's constantly like that. I actually found him entertaining at first and interesting, but now it's like, just shut up. Just shut your mouth.
Well,
Nathan's the loudmouth
so
Irish
loud.
guy.
It's
so
funny. Loud. It's funny because he's like that, and then there are moments where they make you sympathize with him, and they make him like really sympathetic, and then he opens his mouth again and
ruins it all.
Yeah, I know.
Every beautiful moment, his mouth just opens and the moment's just gone.
But I get that. I get his character somewhat because he is this really vulnerable character, and he says that stuff as kind of a defense. That's his defense mechanism.
Right, yeah.
And, but yeah, he's really hard to like until...
He's super crass.
Yeah, he's super crass.
Well, for me, he was like an entry point to connecting to the other characters, because he was the most... I don't want to say like relatable, but he was the most easy to understand. So I was like, oh, okay, I get him. And then he was like the opening for me. Like, he opened the connection for me to the other characters and to the story and to the scene, because he was really easy to understand, and I got his story and I got his point. So I was like, okay, cool. And then I was able to, like, it was just easy to build on his character because it was like, it's a very straightforward character and it's not complicated. Not in the way that the other characters are.
So I think by the end of the series, I'd say my least favorite character is one of the ones who was in the series the longest. So this is a little bit of a spoiler, not wise for you, Lee, but a lot of characters kind of come and go throughout the show after like the second season. So
I've noticed that. Yeah, I've started to notice like, oh man, people are leaving and coming. Like that scares me.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, there's one season that I feel is kind of awkward and it's kind of hurt by that. And then like the next season afterwards with the same cast members that made the last season kind of not work as well is probably the best season of the series.
I have to say though, at the end of the first episode, they call this a superhero show. I still did not get the impression this was in any way a superhero show. It was a messed up kids with superpowers show.
Yes. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the idea of like, if kids, these messed up kids are, juveniles got superpowers and, they're just gonna continue to be messed up kids. They just happen to have superpowers now.
I really like the origin aspect of that story. Like, I love origin stories. I love like how people became who they are or who they will be. Like, I love that process, that metamorphosis, and like that's what attracts me to this show. Like, these kids are really screwed up. Like, will they ever like handle their powers? Will they ever like get to that point where they can actually be the superhero that we sort of expect and want them to be, or that I'm rooting for them to be?
And I'm wondering, is it going to be like a running gag with the one loudmouth kid? Because he doesn't. At the end of the first episode, he doesn't have a superpower. He never shuts up.
No, he does. You'll find out.
He does. You'll find out later.
But it's compatible to his annoyingness.
I was just wondering,
and it connects to one of the funniest moments in the first season. So
okay, I was just wondering how long they're going to drag that out. If that was going to be like a running gag or something.
No, you'll know at the end of the first season.
Okay, Because it kind of ends with, like, him wondering what his power is, and everybody else. Also, another thing is, like, the superpowers on the show is unique. It's nothing, like, super predictable. Like, nobody gets super strength. Nobody becomes the Flash.
Yeah.
Or anything. They have, like, these really kind of outside the box superpowers.
Powers, exactly, yeah.
Like the one guy can like, I don't actually really know. He can like rewind time.
Yeah.
Was that what
Yeah.
that was happening? Okay.
Yeah,
That's
he
what
can
I got.
rewind time.
He can rewind time. And the
That's Curtis, yeah.
Yeah. And the
He's in a Utopia, the actor.
Oh, he is?
Which is the British show that I think Ed was trying to do that for when we did the recommendations.
Yep.
But there's just too many limitations on trying to get access to that show. That's a really good show as well if you ever find a way to watch it. But yeah, he's in that show as well. He quickly became probably my least favorite character by the end of the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's funny because right now he seems to me like the most level-headed and grounded of all of them.
That is what I also like about Curtis, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of gets annoying, I think, as the series goes on, though.
Then the one girl, when they touch her, they become like super hyper turned on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the other girl, she obviously she can read minds.
Yeah.
I thought, and Ramsay Snow can turn invisible.
Yeah, they shake so much of that up as the show goes on, so I don't want to spoil stuff, but the show just kind of shakes everything up through the course of it.
Yeah, they do something and then their powers get a different effect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you'll see a very interesting side of the same power, even. Yeah. Like
that's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
When it comes to unique powers, though, I really like how they were able to, in some cases, create an ability that seems kind of ridiculous or stupid, and then turn it into something kind of menacing.
Oh yes,
all I have to say without spoiling anything is milk.
Yes, I just finished that episode. Yes.
Yeah. That's super creepy, like the way they took that, you know. But yeah.
I think
so.
I thought it was cool that how they made that villain and the humanness of it, like the like you completely understand why he becomes a villain. It's not a surprise. Like I was expecting him to become a villain the whole time because it's not a surprise at all. Like when that happens to you. when those circumstances happen to you in that order, you're like, yeah, you're gonna be a villain.
Yeah.
Like the pilot episode, like the villain for the pilot episode, it's like you don't expect him to be the villain. It kind of makes sense when you take in the context that of like where they are. They're like the community service, and he was like kind of like the boss over them. And
that plays a huge part in the whole series, by the way.
To them, he was already a villain. And then they just take that concept to the extreme.
Yeah, they never explained sort of like why he became.
Yeah, like they got powers and then he became like an out of control psychopath.
Yeah.
That's not explained, but I mean it made it interesting, you know, I mean.
So I believe Lee said that she's going to use this as her pick for the our Advocates of Great TV segment, which we will be bringing back next week.
Okay.
But so we're going to have more about Misfits to talk about next week and the week after with that.
That's good.
Okay.
I'm getting ready where I need to go pretty quick, so I'm going to move us on to Community right now.
Okay.
And so let's start the community talk with Will's experience, because Will, you've been watching the first season.
Yes.
How far have you gotten?
I finished episode 7 tonight. So
Okay. What is episode 7? I don't remember.
That was the one where the Halloween party.
Okay, that one was pretty good.
Yeah, that one was pretty good. That's Abed as Batman.
He does a good Batman, you gotta admit.
Yeah, he nailed the voice. It was like
he's a really good actor. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. Everything Abed so far is my favorite character. Yeah, everything he does, he gets like the most laughs for me. He's just so weird and crazy, but lovable at the same time.
Kind of the center. He's like the glue that holds everything together.
Yeah.
Right. He's the heart of the group, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so far I'm loving this show. I mean,
you haven't gotten to the paintball episode yet, have you?
No. I think
Okay.
that's
I looked this season.
I looked it up, and that's like later in the first season. I was kind of
Mhm.
disappointed that I wasn't going to be able to get to it by tonight, but surely by next week I'll have seen it.
Surely, you say.
Surely. But one of my favorites so far was like the courtroom scene, the Law and Order parody, in like the swimming pool.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Man, John Oliver has been one of the best additions to that show. I know he's a recurring character, but I always love it when he shows up.
Oh yeah, I always him and Senor Chang going at it was like the highlight of that whole sequence.
Have you watched the episode that's the teacher who thinks he's the Dead Poets Society?
Yes. Oh,
that
man.
was one of the early episodes that I absolutely loved. Because I loved when he has them all get up on the desks.
Yep.
And then one of them falls off.
He had them all go. He says, why shouldn't you stand on your desk or something? And then she just falls.
And there's also that awesome moment when they're in the cafeteria and he walks up and he's making fun of Jeff Winger for not seizing the day in the correct way. And so he turns to the person and like picks up a menu and says, "I will have," and he rips it in half and says, A birthday cake!
Yes!
That was one of the first moments that really turned me on to the show. I don't know, I'm curious, if you weren't watching it on recommendation from others, do you think you'd still keep watching it? Because I realize first season can kind of be slow to find its footing.
Right. I think right now, yes, definitely I would continue, because even though I know, like, this is the slow period, I've still laughed harder at this show than I have at most things in recent memory. I mean, there's still a lot of hilarious parts to it, so the idea that gets even better that's just great.
Oh, well, I'm really glad to hear that. Because, yeah, it definitely does get better. So, I'm really excited to hear what you think after you finish first season. Because I think at the end of first season, I feel like the show really starts to come into its own.
Oh, cool, yeah. Well, hopefully I'll have a chance to discuss that next week then. Because I really want to keep you guys updated on my thoughts as I go through this series. I'm looking forward to it. But definitely some fun.
Have they done Troy and Abed in the morning yet?
No, I don't. Not up to that.
You will. Oh, it's so good. Okay, you will love it.
Well, I'm noticing more and more Troy and Abed are kind of forming this relationship.
Oh, the first episode. Did you see when the credits were rolling and then like Jeff Winger comes in? And he's like, "This is how you get down," or something. I died. That like sold it for me. I was rolling on the floor, laughing so hard. I was like, "This is gold. This is like." It was one of those golden moments that like you just never forget. You're like, "Oh."
In fact, speaking of Troy and Abed, one of the best things was when like Troy was messing with Abed, saying he was like Barack Obama's brother and stuff, and like Abed buys it. And then Troy has to tell him, no, man, I was just messing with you. And so then Abed tries to get back at Troy by messing with him. Abed walks up to him and says, "Dogs are blue now." And he says, "I'm just messing with you, by the way."
And Abed, I feel like, I don't know if either of you are a fan of Big Bang Theory. It's a show I've never been able to get into, and I feel like Sheldon on that show is a negative example of a socially inept geek, and I feel like Abed is a positive example of a socially inept geek, because he's socially inept in the show, in never cruel ways that I feel like Sheldon is, and I feel like there's a more relatability. Like, I feel like Ovid is speaking for all the fans in the audience who are, like, super informed about all the meta details.
I never cringe at Abed. I never once felt like the show was mocking him or making fun of him, which happens all too often in the media when they get like a nerdy, socially awkward character. It's like the show and every character on the show is like making fun of that character. He's just there to be mocked. And I don't get that impression with Abed or with the show. It's like he just fits into the style of the show. And he is a respectable comedic character in his own right, because everybody on that show is messed up in one way or another. So,
but Abed's kind of going to end up being the how should I say? He's almost like the gateway to weird on that show.
right.
Like he kind of, it's almost as if everything that's messed up that's happening is because he exists there. He's almost like a super presence in that sense, you know? It's one of the interesting things about his character is that he kind of comes across as being kind of crazy and obsessed and stuff, but then as the show goes on and gets weirder and weirder and weirder, it's like he's pulled everybody in the entire vicinity into his face or something.
I never get the impression that it's mean or he's there just to be a caricature of a nerd for people to laugh at. It's
Yeah, I completely agree with that assessment, and that's why I love him, and that's why I love this show. Is the show can be really meta at times, but not in, I don't know. I'm comparing it to Big Bang Theory again because I don't have a high opinion of that show, because I think that show is really derisive of geeks.
Right.
The audience is laughing at geeks, and that's why I'm always a little discouraged when I see geeks love it, because I think they don't see it.
Right,
And
the whole point.
Whereas on Community, the show is laughing with geeks.
Right. The whole point of Big Bang Theory is, aren't geeks weird and funny? And it's like, well, no. They're people too.
Exactly. Can't we just fit them in this neat little stereotype box where we don't have to think of them as more complex human beings, where we don't have to validate their passions? We can just, they're just a source of derision.
I have a side question. I feel like on Community, I gotta look this up. I'm sorry. I feel like they make fun of the one character in the group, the old guy. I can't remember his name. Pierce. So they make fun of Pierce for being old and like annoying, and he's the classic portrayal of an old person that like society thinks of, right? And in that same way, I see that as the same like side of the coin of like Sheldon. Like we see nerds as annoying and nitpicky,
right,
and autism. Like Community does that too, but they do it to Pierce. They don't do it to a nerd, but they do it to Pierce. Like every show has that character that you hate. Like you can't make a character that everybody likes and that isn't a stereotype. Like every show has one character that is a stereotype, no matter how like well you play it.
I can see that. And I don't want to go into too many spoilers because I think there's some key moments that are going to occur that Will hasn't encountered yet. I still think Community gives a lot of surprising moments of sympathy and humanity to Pierce that really round out his character.
They were already up to where I am. He's already had like several like sympathetic moments. I mean, the last episode I watched, the Halloween episode, was really sympathetic to Pierce. A lot of the ending to that show actually centered around his character. And
did you have the episode yet where it was Pierce and Jeff like teamed up for a class project presentation?
Oh, was it the Spanish presentation? Yes. And Jeff and Pierce was going on about something, and then Jeff takes it and he goes, "Okay, this we're gonna put in a museum for crazy people, and this we're gonna study some phrases from."
Yeah, I feel like even in that episode, I feel like Community, I think, is way too good of a show to stereotype most any of its characters. I think it actually comments on the traditional stereotypes that tend to be applied to each of their archetypes. and then does a great deal more to delve into each of them. I feel like Community is too smart of a show to have ever simply stereotypes
And
anyone in that regard.
as far as
I do agree with that.
as far as like where I am, like whenever Jeff is putting somebody down, we're not supposed to be sympathizing with his point of view because he's supposed to be a jerk. You know, we're supposed to think, hey, Jeff Winger is a kind of a jerk. You know, that is supposed to be his character. So when he's mocking somebody or put them down, it's not for the viewer to sympathize with. And I think that also as well.
I would agree with that. Is that this is a show that will frequently paint the characters that are traditionally the heroes will make them more of the bad guy.
Right.
So Lee, you were gonna say?
I was just gonna say that I agree with that. I agree that Community is a very smart show. It does a lot of very, very interesting things, whereas I do feel like Big Bang Theory has settled into its groove and it's just kind of like digging itself into its death. Like it's playing the same. It's got a soundtrack. Like I can hear the soundtrack now, and it's not interesting. Like they're not keeping it interesting. They're not keeping it new. They are playing the
formulaic.
same. Yeah, it's very formulaic. They are playing the same characters over and over again. So I completely agree with you in that sense that Community is smart. It's keeping itself, like it's always challenging itself in a way.
Right. And yeah, Big Bang Theory is this formulaic, typical sitcom.
Very sitcom, very much so.
Yeah, it's
from that CBS mold of sitcoms, which aren't really the best.
No, yeah. I can't remember the last time I really enjoyed a CBS sitcom.
They used to say that about series, but now they have person of interest. So.
Yeah.
I feel like they took an original idea and an interesting show and an interesting dynamic and made it uninteresting and ununique. Like they took something so unique and like made it so bland.
That's Chuck Lorre for you.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
but I think that's why. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's why Big Bang Theory gets huge ratings, no doubt about it. But you do not find an intense fandom for Big Bang Theory the same level that you do for a show like Community, and that's because I think that says something different about in general, what kind of audiences each of those respective shows attract.
Well, Big Bang Theory has
a huge fandom.
Yeah, it does have a huge fan base. I just think they are probably less passionate than you'd say like the Community fan base, whereas like Community and like Firefly, shows like that tend to have like very just completely dedicated rabid fan bases, you know, where like I don't necessarily see that with Big Bang Theory, but they do have a very large actual fan base, you know. They do have like a huge Comic-Con presence every year and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right.
But I agree. Like, I just don't think it's quite on the same level of fervor, and I think that speaks to the very different kinds of shows especially in terms of humor that each of them are aspiring for.
Interesting enough, those two shows used to be on at the same time. They were in like direct competition with each other.
I'm not surprised.
That's right.
And Big Bang Theory just slaughtered Community in the ratings. It was a large part of what hurt Community, was that it would, you know, people would say that, you know, even though we were talking about it not appealing to the same audience, there is some crossover, you know, there is some geek crossover there.
Right.
And, so you'd get a lot of the people that were just big into Big Bang Theory, and it was a big thing, and they were more kind of casual viewers that kind of got into it on that side that probably would have really dug Community, but never gave it a shot because it was on at the same time. This was, of course, you know, when in the early adoption ages of DVR and stuff before everybody could watch whatever, whenever, you know?
Yeah.
True.
Well, here's one thing I'm hoping now that Community is strictly on an online streaming service only is I don't know precisely how it works, but like surely they could get a more literal recording of exactly how many people are watching Community as opposed to the Nielsen method, which is just using sampling. Because I'm
Oh yeah, they
really
can get an
curious to
exact
see-
number.
Yeah, they can get an
Yeah,
exact
I want to know
number.
the exact.
I don't think
number.
It's
I don't think they'll put it out though.
no.
No, I
Like,
don't think they will, but I'd be really curious to know, just because I feel like, I don't know, it's always hard to tell with these kind of things. 'Cause
Right.
I guess I'm pretty skeptical of Nielsen's. I understand why it exists the way it does, but I think it's an inherently flawed system.
I think so
Oh, yeah,
too.
definitely.
I think it's a
Well, the Nielsen system is it's like a reflection of the Electoral College in our country, which is also a very flawed system, you know?
right. It
Yes.
it takes a
Yes.
small sample and then extrapolates from that, which is kind of
Yeah.
I don't like it. I think a lot of good shows might have suffered because of that system, but it's hard to tell.
Yeah, oh, definitely. There are shows that were just too big in the fan base, got too much attention. Like, they'd show up at a place like Comic-Con and just utterly pack out buildings, and then got ratings that just did not even come close to showing that. Of course, people will say, well, yeah, you have the most rabid of the rabid fan base people that were really into it, and they'll go like miles to go to a convention to see the cast and stuff like that, where the other ones don't. But it's like, there's gotta be some representation, even if it's skewed a little bit. There has to be some direct representational connection
Right.
to to those shows having a larger fan base.
How many
than-
people in that packed auditorium was a Nielsen viewer? It's like
Probably none.
probably
yeah,
none.
exactly.
Go on, Lee.
I actually completely agree with that. I think that makes total sense, because if you look at The Big Bang Theory, it is a show for the everyman. Like, anyone can get into that. But I feel like Community is so specific and so smart and so different. Like, it's always challenging itself. It's always doing something new. I feel like because of that, not everyone can get into it. It's not the show for the everyman, and like, it would have that more narrow spectrum of demographics watching, but more passionate, because it is their niche. That's their niche.
Right.
That's their thing, right? So like, yeah, it makes sense that Community would have a more rabid fan base, less viewers, and then Big Bang would have more fans, but not as passionate, just because it is catering to everyone. It's not a niche.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they were movies, Big Bang Theory would have like a huge opening night, and it would have like millions and millions of viewers, and Community would be the movie that opened okay and then just kept getting viewers over and over again.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
it just stayed for weeks and weeks in the same position.
That
Right.
movie
Yeah.
would be a classic. Like, a few years later, it'd be like, you gotta watch that movie. That movie came out and it didn't do well, but now it's like, it's popular, it's niche, yeah.
It would become
There are movies.
Yeah, it's a cult, yeah.
gradually a large portion of the population, if they hadn't seen it, they were at least familiar with it and probably had it recommended to them by a bunch of friends.
Mm-hmm.
That does happen to a lot of movies. I mean, Fight Club is a perfect example of
Yeah.
that. That's a movie did not do well at the box office.
Right.
And when I tell people that, sometimes they're actually kind of surprised, because everybody knows what Fight Club is, you know?
Oh yeah,
It's
Yeah.
become so influential.
a lot
with
of
so many
a
different
lot of
things.
movies, unbeknownst to people, but a lot of movies may actually make their money back on the DVD sales and not at the box office.
Not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore.
Not anymore, yeah.
But
But
Well, I'm actually glad for that, because I think it's easy to put too much stock in that opening weekend, just like it's too much easy to put stock in into the Nielsen ratings for a show, and
Right.
and that's not necessarily always the best measure for audience response to a
no,
show.
it's not.
well, I
Because-
think what's
It's sad because
Community fans are all going to go out and buy all the seasons of Community, and they're going to
Oh, yeah.
pay money to whomever will continue to make this show and make movies for it. And you're not
Oh,
going to
yeah.
find that as much with higher rated shows.
and
and they're
that's
going to buy Greendale t-shirts
and that's what Yahoo recognized when they decided that they were going to jump into the game with original streaming content, move ahead to more ambitious content. That's what Yahoo recognized, and that's why they picked up Community, I think. Because they recognized they had this passionate fan base that kind of fit into their niche, because they're an online company, an internet streaming-based company, And so that kind of fits more that demographic.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about Yahoo picking up Community. Kat, let's put off the season 6 discussion just because I know that Lee didn't get to watch it yet and Will isn't up to date on it. So we can talk about that later.
That sounds fun.
If you want, we could do like a side podcast like Will and I did for the other thing, or we could just talk about it at a later date with everyone.
I'm good either way.
So for now, let's put that off and let's talk about the move to Yahoo and something I wanted to bring up about that was that Yahoo Screen is not a very great experience for watching.
I saw your comments on the Skype chat and I was like, oh god, this is terrible.
So did you have a similar experience to me with that, Kat?
Yeah, well, I don't know exactly what your experiences were, but it just took forever to load. I was watching it with my sister, and we had to try it on 2 different computers, and it kept pausing, and it wasn't even buffering or anything. You had to rewind, and I feel like it's just such a new streaming service that, unlike say Hulu, they haven't yet figured out how to stabilize this streaming service for a huge amount of people all at the same time.
They probably
I don't know. What were your experiences like?
Similar to that, but in addition to that, I just think that the interface itself is very intrusive on Yahoo Screen. It just gets in the way. It's like a pain in the butt, you know? There's just too much stuff there. It's like unless you put it into full screen, you can't even see the whole image, you know? It's like so blocked off.
Right.
And it doesn't scale properly like the way it would on like Hulu or YouTube or anything else.
I got this.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of Amazon in that both of those are starting to get good content now and stuff. Neither of them have good interfaces. No. They're both kind of like a nightmare to navigate and get through.
I got that when I was like watching the trailer for season 6 of Community on Yahoo Screen, and I was like trying to like figure out the interface of that.
It's just too intrusive. It's just all in your way.
Yeah. And like I was writing the story up on that, and I was like trying to figure out how to embed the Yahoo Screen directly into. It was just not fun.
I think it's the downside to having companies that are regularly dedicated to something else entering the let's make some original scripted television, because Hulu doesn't have that problem, but Hulu is dedicated solely to the airing of scripted television, so it never had any kind of that issue. So hopefully that won't become a pervasive thing, but who knows what will happen from here on out. It probably depends on how successful Community is for them.
Right. But with Yahoo picking up Community and with Yahoo's horrible interface for for their screen thing, I was thinking about that just now as we were talking about the move to Yahoo, that perhaps this is the absolute perfect choice for Yahoo, because you have a fan base that's rabid enough to actually go through this shitty interface and check out the show. If they had picked up like an original series, like a new series that nobody had watched, I think a lot of people would start going through the interface and then just go, fuck it.
Oh yeah, people wouldn't.
And they wouldn't watch
put up with it for
That's
new
very
content.
true, whereas Community fans will endure many levels of torture just to see the newest episode.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I'm on the page and I cannot figure out how to watch anything. Like, how does this work?
Much.
I'm like, I'm pressing things and nothing.
If they told you there was like a new episode of Community, but you had to click through 50 pop-up ads and like do a quiz at the end of it,
they would do it.
They would do it.
It's like design-wise, the Yahoo Screen thing is like, in some ways it feels like a website from the 90s. And in some ways it feels like modern, but it doesn't quite mix that balance. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Exactly, Lee. Exactly.
I'm actually surprised Netflix didn't pick it up, actually.
I am surprised, yeah.
There was talk about that. Netflix, I guess, was approached. I don't know if they turned it down or if it was just, the negotiations fell through. The Yahoo thing that happened was like last minute. I mean, it was like the day the contracts were going to expire.
I bet it's for the reasons. Wow. I bet it's for the reasons that you were saying. Is that Netflix doesn't, and Netflix has its shows are critically acclaimed and winning awards. It doesn't need original programming from outside with established fan bases to get off the ground.
Right.
Whereas Yahoo clearly wants to enter this market, and having a show with such a rabid, devout fan base to start them off, I think they probably view it as a really positive way for them to try to enter the market.
And it's interesting to note Netflix already played that card when they picked up Arrested Development.
Arrested Development, yeah. And that didn't pay out too well for them because there was a lot of negative backlash towards the Netflix season of Arrested Development. I actually thought it was good, but the problem with it was that they kind of took a more interesting approach in the way they made this like jigsaw puzzle of a season where you have to watch like the whole season to kind of really get everything,
Now
because it all kind of fits together in a weird way. So because of that, like people would tune in for the first couple episodes and go, they ruined Arrested Development.
Yeah. With that in mind, if you can give a quick one-word summary, the new episode of Community, does that stack up? Is it disappointing?
In terms of quality?
In terms of quality, yeah, compared to what was on television, was there a quality dip?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
To me, that was the most encouraging thing going into it. But at the same time, you'll probably find this well as you go through the series. Community was run by Dan Harmon for the first 3 seasons, and then he was let go for 4th season. And 4th season is a different show, and you can tell that it has different showrunners. And a lot of people were really hard on it, understandably so. And then Dan Harmon came back for 5th season, and Community is Community again. It has its voice back, and Dan Harmon is still running the show. And so the result is, it doesn't matter what format this show is, as long as Dan Harmon is running it, it is the show that we love. So I don't know.
It's the Dan Harmon show,
but to me it felt exactly like Community.
So there's no noticeable dip in the Yahoo episode compared.
I'd say it wasn't a dip in quality. I'd say it does feel a little different to me. It feels like structurally a little different, and I think that might just be because it's on a service now. It's not on network TV, and so they're kind of handling it a different way. But there's certain kind of inconsistencies character-wise that I feel I've noticed. It's still really funny, though. It's still really good. Like, I'll watch something and I'll go like, I'm not sure I like that direction went, but I laughed. I still laughed. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Okay.
To me, it almost feels like the later seasons of Supernatural, like the really good episodes in the later seasons of Supernatural, where it's like, it's not quite the same Supernatural from the first 5 seasons.
Right.
But like, it's still a really good episode, But instead of having major dips, at least in the first 2 episodes so far, like Supernatural did, where the later seasons would kind of have really good episodes and it would dip for a while and then really good episode. Instead of being in a structure like that, the 2 so far have both been really good episodes.
Okay.
But it has that feeling that it's almost, when I was watching Supernatural, I remember after the first 5 seasons, I consider everything after that to be like this really long epilogue. And I almost feel the same way with Community now. They were like, this feels like an epilogue. It's a better epilogue than Supernatural's epilogue, but it still has that kind of feeling like something's different a little bit.
Oh, okay. I get where you're going with Supernatural. I mean, huge.
I might just being hypercritical on Community though, on it. It might just be that I'm so nervous about, the quality dipping or something that I'm reading too much into it, but I can say, having just finished the first 2 episodes, I just watched those right before I started working on the show notes tonight, that, there were a few parts that felt a little inconsistent to me, but it was still funny. Like, I'd be laughing even though, it didn't take away my enjoyment from it.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I was curious to know that, because that usually seems to happen when we get show revivals. or shows come back. It's like
there seem to be. Go on.
Well, in the case of Arrested Development, I think that was part because there was such a huge amount of time that took place in between. Whereas Community, the last time we got new episodes was just last May, and so it really didn't have a big gap in time.
It had like the same.
The actors and Dan Harmon hadn't really lost the fabric of that show yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had like the same turnover as normal season.
Arrested Development is an interesting story, I think largely because they had a really hard time getting the whole cast together because they all had such busy schedules that were so different. And so they actually, in the entire Netflix season, there was only one day that they had the whole cast together. And so they kind of had to put it together. They took this entirely different approach. Like I said, it was like a jigsaw puzzle approach to that season. And I think they kind of had to do that. And because they had to, they made it interesting. But at the same time, it lost a lot of its like structural feel because it didn't, each episode would kind of focus on a single part of the story. Whereas part of the charm of Arrested Development was the way it would kind of just jump around to the different characters and kept everything moving really fast. Well, now it's like, no, you're just kind of hanging around with this character for a while. And it kind of, changed the pace of the humor in Arrested Development. And it's largely, like I said, because they could only get the whole cast together for one day.
Right.
And I think that also shows another vital difference is if Community had been off the air a couple of years, it probably would have had the same problem with the cast having all gone their separate ways, and they would have had a harder time getting them all back together. Whereas because they didn't have that big a gap of time, then they were still able, even though they sadly we lost Yvette Nicole Brown, they were still able to get not just still the study group, but also they are still able to keep Ken Jeong and Jim Rash on the show and lots of the peripheral characters, and so there's still a stronger sense of continuity there.
There seems to be this other element that they're bringing into the show as well. It's been in the first 2 episodes so far, where the episodes have ended with like this really, I don't want to spoil it, but like both episodes ended with kind of like this weird parody thing connected to the show, like in some strange way. Like one was like a trailer for a movie that doesn't exist that they were talking about in the episode. And the other one was like based on something that they mentioned, about, Yvette Nicole Brown's character. It was about her. And then they had this scene at the end that was kind of about that, but it also had like a little subtle dig at NBC in it too. I don't know if subtle is the right word, but yeah, there was a dig at NBC in it, that you could definitely see that I thought was really funny. So, so I wonder if that's going to be like a thing now. Is every episode going to end with like some weird preview or trailer for some other connected thing that doesn't really exist,
and then it'll all add up to something, kind of like how fans only just in the past couple years realized that all of the McBain clips on The Simpsons add up to an actual like movie that in order.
Are you serious?
Community could do
yeah. That's been edited together now.
Oh, that is awesome. And I all these years, never realized that.
I know, you can find the whole thing on YouTube. Just Google McBain movie and you can watch the whole thing. It's probably like 5 or 10 minutes long.
Oh God, that's brilliant. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Alright, so unless anybody else has something else to say, let's wrap up this podcast for tonight.
Awesome.
Alright.
Okay. So next week we are going to be doing Advocates of Great Television again. We're each going to pick a show that is either lesser known or that we don't think everyone here has watched, and we're going to pick a specific episode. And all of us were going to watch that episode, and then the week after that, we're all going to go back and talk about what we'd seen. So, it's time to you guys got to get started on figuring out what show you're going to recommend. Looks like Lee's already got Misfits as our first pick.
Well, if I pick an episode, doesn't that like spoil the show for like people who are watching it? Like if I pick, the last episode of like season 2 or something.
Make sure to pick something in the middle of season 3 that has a lot of spoilers. No.
You can usually find an episode that doesn't spoil too much. Usually there's kind of a trick to it, you know. I think Kat picked one that was kind of towards the end of a first season, so we didn't really understand the characters as much, but it worked. Ed picked one that was kind of in the middle of the season, so we didn't get the character introductions, but we kind of figured it out, and that worked. So, yeah, I mean, you might want to pick something that's kind of more of like a standalone kind of episode in the bunch.
Okay.
That might help with it. You know, or you can just warn us that there's spoilers and tell us ahead. Give us a week.
I don't want to do that to
figure it
someone
out.
just because it's such a good episode. Okay, I'll probably pick something else.
Okay. And then yeah, so we'll all pick our shows, and yeah, you guys got a week to pick out your shows.
This is gonna be hard. I mean,
has anyone seen Better Off Ted? Have people seen that show?
Yeah, I've seen Better Off Ted.
I think I've seen an episode of that before.
Okay, I won't do that show then.
No, you can totally do it because I
best use
barely
of Portia
remember
de
it.
Rossi.
There was
Best use of Portia de Rossi outside of Arrested Development. Her
Speaking of
character in that show is one of my favorite characters.
It's pretty good.
there was a short-lived Fred Savage sitcom called Working. That was like really zany and off the wall.
I think I saw like one part of one episode or something. That was like my pre-DVR days.
That
I
was
think, if I remember
my
correctly.
pre-DV. I thought that show was hilarious when I was on. I didn't like watch it all the time. It was like a sitcom. It was one of those shows where if you caught it on, you would sit there and you'd watch it, and I'd laugh. I don't know how it holds up today though. I haven't seen it in forever. But geez, that just came to mind because I think Better Off Ted was like kind of similar to that. It tone, but weird.
Do you guys want to just, since we normally end up picking more dramatic stuff, do you guys just want to all go for comedy for this next round? Do something like that?
I already was gonna, because you had mentioned it a couple of days ago, I was already gonna pick out Gilmore Girls if that works. So it's a dramedy, so it's funny-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, that's fine.
Can I pick a foreign TV show, or do you guys...
As long as we can watch it. As long as there's a reasonable means for us to watch it. If it's on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or something.
It'll be on... I think I'm pretty sure it's on Crunchyroll, so there is access to it. You guys can watch it for free, but they'll maybe like one or two ads will play during the middle.
That should be fine.
It's a really good show.
And if Kat or Will don't have access to Crunchyroll and you can't get it on the free, I have some like 48-hour trials that I can give them. So.
Oh yeah, you can try it. You can try it for free. Yeah.
I have Crunchyroll, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kat, I can get you covered if you need it, because I have some. They give you a 48-hour trial every month you subscribe that you can give to somebody else, so I can give you that, Kat, and then you don't have to sit through commercials. Okay, so yeah, I'm trying to think. I only have the anime membership, but I think that just recently switched over to pretty much everything now.
I think so too. At least anime and manga now. I got an email about that. It mentioned manga.
Yeah.
I don't know if it like extends to the dramas still. But I'll have to check that out.
But even so, the 48-hour passes I have are all access, so I can just create a separate account and just watch.
Nice. I'm drawing a blank. Cool. I'm pretty sure everything I've watched, at least one of you is well aware of. So I can't think of anything.
It doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, there were I think I'd seen Dead Like Me and a little bit of Friday Night Lights before. So it could be something that we've seen. It just, if you're going to pick something that we've probably already seen, pick something that's maybe a little bit older so that it gives us an excuse to kind of rewatch it almost with like fresh eyes, you know?
Who here has seen Justified at all?
Nope.
I've seen it, but if you pick an earlier episode, it would be rewatching for me.
It would be rewatching. Okay, that's a possibility.
And that's a good one. I wouldn't mind that, yeah.
Yeah, alright.
I would be really interested in seeing how, like you guys take on a Japanese show or a Korean show. Like, I think that would be very interesting, having that American perspective.
That would be interesting for me, because I have never watched a live-action Japanese or Korean show before.
It'll be, you'll notice it's very stylized. It's very like anime. It's got a very specific style to it.
I've
Is it
seen
more
a few of the
theatrical? 'Cause I
Japanese
feel
ones.
At
It's-
least in terms of video games, Japanese video games, I feel like are very theatrical.
Yes.
It's like watching theater. Yeah, it's a little bit like that. Well, this show is.
It'll be interesting. It'll be an experience regardless, and
yeah.
that's cool. I actually like the idea about that because I haven't really seen any of the Korean dramas. I've seen a few of the Japanese ones.
They're so
I've
good.
seen like what was it, a Toko Man, the Train Man one.
If you're gonna watch Korean drama, it's gotta be Coffee Prince. It's gotta be Coffee Prince. You cannot watch any, so there's like the standard that sets the style for every other, like, show, right? So there's the first show that comes out that becomes really popular and sets the standard. So, like, Coffee Prince was that show. It came out, it was a huge hit, it set the standard for, like, how shows are, and for, like Chinese dramas, it's Meteor Garden. Meteor Garden came out in 1998, and it, like, blew up, and, like, the style is now copied in all, like, Chinese shows. And, like, that's the same with Japanese shows. There's like, a standalone show. It's like the Coca-Cola of shows. So each, like, drama has its Coca-Cola. So, like, you have to watch the Coca-Cola show. Then you can have, like, the Pepsi and, like, the Orange Crunch and, like, the other stuff. Like, but you gotta watch the Coca-Cola show, because that was the show that made it. Like, that was the show that set.
And then a ways later, you can get to Mr. Pibb.
So you're saying, like, it started a formula that everybody started
the formula, right? You're right.
Right.
Kind of like The Office, then, I guess, in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun, guys. Pick your shows, and we'll each discuss why we picked our shows, talk a little bit about them, get us all hyped up for it, and then the next week we'll have all seen at least one episode from all of those shows. I'm gonna end the podcast now. I gotta go. So thank you for listening to the TV Enthusiast Podcast, the weekly set. Do any of you have anything to plug or anything to mention?
I'm doing a video every day for a year, so that's on my YouTube channel if anyone wants to check it out. It's The Incorporated. It'll be on my profile, so yeah.
I'll add a link to the story too.
Okay. Great.
And Will, you're on Twitter now?
I'm on Twitter at Voxel Hero. If you want to follow that.
I'm on Twitter at Tyson Gifford. Barely use it though.
Yep, same.
You could check out our Facebook page though. You can comment on our stories. We love to get comments. the rare times we do get them.
Yes.
And we do have a forum that nobody uses. So
go ahead.
Feel free to jump on and have.
Go ahead and flame me. Flame me to hell. I don't care. Just comment.
I'll take that as an invitation, Will.
Okay.
Kat, do you have anything to plug? Any stories coming up on PlayStation Enthusiast or?
Oh, not at present, no.
So that'll be it for the week. So, thank you everybody for listening. Bye.
Bye.
If you would like to voice your opinion, send an email to theweeklyset@tventhusiast.com. TV Enthusiast is a part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Stay tuned to TV Enthusiast and the Weekly Set podcast for more coverage of all of your favorite shows. 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 Of all of your favorite shows.